Good morning, Friday, May 5th, 2023. Baseball records. I'm going to get into runs scored. Runs scored. Who's number one? I have 169 players. 168 of them are in the Hall of Fame. One is not. Pete Rose. He's not in the Hall of Fame. I'm going to cover 169 players. Rickey Henderson is number one in runs scored in the Baseball Hall of Fame. 2,295 runs scored. His high was 146 in one season. Rickey got on base, whether by the walk, hit, whatever, and he scored the most runs. Played a long time. Played for a lot of teams, too. Kind of a strange guy, Rickey Henderson, because he has the most stolen bases. We know that. But I'm wondering, why did he bounce around so much? I've got him here in this book. Let me point out something. You may not realize it. Did you know that Rickey Henderson played for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different teams? If he's a good ball player, why is he bouncing around? But he has the most runs scored. Played from 1979 to 2003. That was the key. That's about 24 to 25 years of baseball, off and on, right? Because some of the years, like toward the end, he didn't play as much, and in the beginning, he didn't play as much. But he's in there a lot, and he's scoring a lot of runs. That's why he's number one. Is he Hall of Fame? Yes, because of the stolen bases and the runs scored. His career batting average is 279. That's not good enough for me. He does have 3,000 hits. Rickey could have done better, in my opinion, as far as the batting average. But he excelled in stolen bases and runs scored, number one. Number two, Ty Cobb, 2,246. And how did he do it? Because he played over 3,000 games. His high was 148. How about number three, Henry Aaron, 2,174. Did you know that him and Babe Ruth are tied in runs scored? Both have 2,174. The difference is Ruth was better at runs scored than Aaron. Aaron's high was 127 runs scored in the season. Babe Ruth, who's number 4, 2,174, his high is 177. How does a big guy like Ruth score 177 runs in one season? Because he got walked a lot and he got on a lot. But he's a home run hitter. So you think that he's not on base as much if he's hitting solo homers, right? He's not scoring as much runs. 714 home runs. We know that. But Ruth, let me give you something on Ruth compared with Aaron, okay? They both have 2,174 runs scored. Listen to Ruth's totals. 158, 177, 151, 143, 139, 158, 163, 150, 149. Those are some of his runs scored per season. So Ruth has higher numbers in runs scored than Aaron. Listen to Aaron's totals. Aaron had a lot. He had like 12 or 13 of them, right? But listen to his totals. 105, 106, 118, 109, 116, 102, 115, 103. His high was 127, had a 109, a 117, a 113, where Ruth, he's got the 158, the 151, the 143, the 158, the 163, the 150, 149. Listen to this. Ruth scored over 150 runs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And he had 149. That would have been 7. And he had 143. That would have been 8. Aaron never got that high. Who's better at runs scored? Babe Ruth. 5 on the list, Pete Rose. 2,165. But you know how he did it? Because he has the most games. 3,562 games. Did you know that Ruth played 2,500 games, right? Babe Ruth? 2,503. Did you know that Pete Rose played 1,000 more games than Babe Ruth, yet still finished below Babe Ruth in runs scored? Give Babe Ruth 1,000 more games, so he has the same number of games as Pete Rose. Babe Ruth would have had probably 3,000 runs scored. You think so? Isn't that interesting? Pete Rose, 3,562 games. Babe Ruth, 2,503. Yet Babe Ruth scores 2,174 and Pete Rose 2,165, 9 less. Yet Rose has 1,000 more games. It's kind of an interesting fact to kind of dwell on, don't you think? 6 on the list, Willie Mays, 2,062. I like it. So you have 6 guys that have scored 2,000 or more runs. I'm talking about Hall of Famers because there are other guys that will get over the 2,000 mark, but they're not in the Hall of Fame. So let me focus on Hall of Famers, except Pete Rose, obviously, because I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Got to include him in the top 169. Listen to this. For Mays, he's another guy. Just 130 runs was his high. Never got into the 140s or the 150s like Ruth. Whereas Henderson and Cobb are in the 140s. Henderson, 146 was his high. Cobb was 148. That was his high. How about number 7 on the list, Cap Hansen? You want to hear something about him? Runs scored. 1,999. One short of 2,000 runs. Cap. How could you retire? He played 27 years. How could you retire 1 run short of 2,000? If I was him in 1897 was his last year, I would call up a team in 1898 and say, hey, I will play for free. Just let me play 1 or 2 more games. Let me get 1 more run. I have 1,999. I need 2,000. You could have done it. Someone would have picked him up on the team, don't you think? Cap Hansen? I'll volunteer. I'll just come. I just need 1 more run scored. 8 on the list. Stan Musial. 1949. He's another guy. Shouldn't have stopped. Stopped in 1963, right? Musial? Had a long career, but if I was Musial, I would say 1 more. I need 51 more runs scored to get to 2,000. And you know he did on RBIs? 1,951. So Stan Musial could have been a player to have 2,000 runs and 2,000 RBIs. Did you know that there are only 2 guys in the Hall of Fame that have 2,000 runs scored and 2,000 RBIs? Who are they? Henry Aaron, 2,174 in runs scored and 2,297 in RBIs. Babe Ruth, 2,174 runs scored and 2,214 in RBIs. You may ask, what about Willie Mays? He has 2,062 runs scored. But did he get 2,000 RBIs? I'm looking him up. Mays. What did Mays do in RBIs? 1,903. So two guys I know of. 2,000 runs scored, 2,000 RBIs. Stan Musial, 1,949. Should have kept playing. He could have been the third guy. Because he falls short. He's 51 runs scored short of 2,000. And in RBIs, he's about 50 short. One more year, Stan. Numbers matter. 9 on the list. Interesting guy here. Derek Jeter, 1,923. Good career for Derek Jeter. 3,000 hits and 1,900 runs scored. 10 on the list. Lou Gehrig, 1,888. But you know what's interesting about Lou Gehrig? He was on pace for 2,000 runs scored. Because listen to this on Gehrig. Only 17 years. Ruth, 22 years. Aaron, 23 years. But Gehrig, only 17. And in his last year, 8 games. So we can say that Gehrig played 16 years. And yet he scored 1,888 runs. Listen to his totals. 135, 149, 139, 127, 143, 163, 138, 138, 128, 125, 167. Yes, 2 160s. 138 and 115. He was a run scored machine. 2,164 games for Gehrig. So give him 900 more games. He's a run a game, right? That's 900 more runs. Gehrig could have ended up with 2,750 runs scored if he plays 900 more games. 16-year career. This is a what if for Lou Gehrig. 11 on the list. Chris Speaker, 1,882. Had a higher 137. So he's not in the 150s, 160s like Gehrig and Ruth. But he's a run scoring guy. Mel Ott, 12, 1,859. Had a high 138. 13, Craig Biggio, 1,844. He had a high 146. That's good. Aaron is in the 120s. Jeter, 130. But Craig Biggio beat him. 146 was his high. Very good. He was on base a lot. Craig Biggio. 14, Frank Robinson, 1,829. 134 runs scored. He's kind of like Aaron. 15, Eddie Collins, 1,821. 137 was his high. 16, Carl Yastrzemski, 1,816 runs scored. This high, 125. Here's an interesting guy here. 17 on the list, Ted Williams. 1,798. We know he missed 3.5, 4 years in the military. He ends up with 1,798. Here's a what if for Ted Williams. His high was 150. See, some of these guys are a little better at scoring runs than other Hall of Famers. Ruth, Gehrig, and Ted Williams all surpassed 150 runs scored in the season at least once. Ted Williams has good totals. 131, 134, 135, 141, 142, 125, 124, 150. He has 2,200 games. Give him 800 games, and Ted Williams could have scored 2,500 runs. What if? 18 on the list. Paul Molitor, 1,782. 136 was his high. 19, Charlie Gehringer, 1774. His high, 144. That's good. You get in the 140s. So he was pretty good at runs scored. There's another guy. Jimmy Fox, number 20 on the list. 1,751. Why am I stopping and commenting on Jimmy Fox? Because he had a high of 151 once. If you get into a 150, you're pretty good. Jimmy Fox, 1,751 runs scored in 2,300 games. Give him 800 more games. He's in the 2,500s. See, some of these guys are better at scoring runs. 151 was the high for Jimmy Fox. He's a what if. '21 on the list, Honus Wagner, 1,736. But you know, Honus Wagner, his high was only 114 runs scored. Wagner was good at batting titles. He had 8 of them. But as far as scoring runs, not as good as Ruth and Gehrig and Fox. 22 on the list, Jim O'Rourke, 1,729. 119 was his high. 23, Jesse Burkett. Listen to this guy. 1,720 runs scored, but you got to take note of Jesse Burkett. You know what he did? One season, he scored 160 runs. Woo! And another season, he had 153. He had a 145 and a 142. Jesse Burkett was good at scoring runs. 2,000 games, 1,720. Give him 1,000 games. He's a what if. He'd be about 2,600 runs scored. What's the record? The record is 2,200 by Ricky Henderson, right? But some of the guys, if they play longer, would hold the record. It could have been Jesse Burkett. It probably would have been Babe Ruth, because if he plays the same number of games as some of these other guys, I think Babe Ruth would have been the #1 guy in runs scored. Jesse Burkett, Ted Williams, they're probably 1 or 2 or 3 right in there, because they were on pace. And you know, Gehrig too was on pace too. He was on pace for about 2,600. Burkett, Williams, and Gehrig could hold the record. But I think Ruth ultimately would be #1. Here's another guy, 24 on the list, Willie Keeler. This guy could hold the record if he played enough games. Why? Well, let's look at his totals. Just 2,100 games, and he has 1,719 runs scored. But listen to his totals. 165 was his high. Woo! Then the next season he goes 162, 153, 145, 126, 140. He was good at runs scored. Add Keeler, Willie Keeler, to Ruth, Gehrig, Williams, Fox, and Burkett. All have the potential to have 2,500 runs scored if they play more games. But 25 on the list. Who holds the record for most runs scored in one season? That's Billy Hamilton. And this is quite amazing. 1894 season. He plays 132 games. Didn't even play 154, just 132. And he scored 198 runs. Wow, just short of 200. Billy Hamilton, 1,594 games, 1,697 runs. That's more average than a run a game. Every game he played, he averaged a run scored. Better. 1,594 games, 1,697 runs scored. So that's 100 more runs scored per games played. He had a 163. No, he had a 198. He had a 153. He had a 166. He had a 152. Had a 144. Maybe I need to correct myself. I think I'm saying that Babe Ruth could have the possibility of scoring 3,000 runs. But you know, now that I'm looking at Billy Hamilton, 1,594 games, 1,697 runs. So double the 1,594. 1,600 times 2 is 3,200 games. It's possible that Billy Hamilton could have scored 3,300 runs if he played 3,200 games. So I'll correct myself. Billy Hamilton is the best guy in the Hall of Fame at scoring runs. He had the potential of 3,200 runs scored. Ends up with 1,697. But he only played 1,594 games. What do you think about these what-if scenarios? Don't you agree? We got to ask the question. Who is the best guy in the Hall of Fame? The ball player at scoring runs. Who is the best at it? Billy Hamilton. Played from 1888 to 1901. Billy Hamilton can lay claim as the best at scoring runs in baseball history. All right, that'll do this video. We'll do this countdown. I've got 169 ball players we're looking at. 168 of them are in the Hall of Fame. And we'll rank them. So 25 on the list is Billy Hamilton. Number 1, Rickey Hendrickson can lay the claim. He can say, hey guys, of all the guys in the Hall of Fame, I have 2,295 runs scored. So he's number 1. He did it. But there are other guys that had the potential to beat him if they just had played in a what-if presupposed fantasy world of playing more games. And those guys could have been Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Ted Williams, Jimmy Fox, Jesse Burkett, Willie Keeler, and ultimately, Billy Hamilton. Thanks for watching here. We'll continue the countdown next video. I'm out.